Thank you guys for being here, and thank Kim Wilson of the fabulous Thunderbirds for being here for a pre-show interview.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, Fabulous Thunderbirds, 8:15 tonight on the Foundation stage. And you know, you're in the home of Slim Harpo and Lazy Lester and Lightnin' Slim and Henry Gray and many of our local blues heroes. Now, these guys mean a lot to you. Am I right?
They were very big influences. Very big influences. In fact, you know, of course, we cut a couple of Slim Harpo and a couple of Lazy Lester tracks, and the wealth of music in this area is absolutely incredible. If you look at just the Baton Rouge area and all the stuff that was on
Excello Records, yeah.
It's an incredible legacy.
Mm-hmm. What is it? We call this the Swamp Blues. I mean, it wasn't called Swamp Blues when it was first created, but we call it that now. What is it about that music that reached you guys so much, reached the fabulous Thunderbirds and influenced them?
Well, it's not like Chicago blues. It's more kind of contemporary to me.
Okay.
It's more
modern than Chicago blues.
More benign.
Okay.
As opposed to Chicago blues, which will scare the hell out of you. You know what I mean?
Howlin' Wolf will scare the hell out of anybody.
Yeah, Howlin' Wolf will scare the hell out of you.
And Muddy Waters too, I think.
Yeah, except for a guy like, well, Lightnin' Slim, that was about as low as you can get, which I love.
Yeah.
They used to say that he did. Who's the guy from Excello Records, the head guy?
J.D. Miller.
Yeah.
In Crowley, Louisiana.
Yeah, that's where they cut all this stuff. And they said that he would give Lightnin' Slim's wife the money.
Okay.
And then he'd come out with some really good songs.
Lightnin' Slim is so great, and he's one of the more obscure guys, but again, he's one of the guys that you really love.
I loved him. I've been cutting a bunch of traditional tracks lately, and I've cut a couple of Lightnin' Slim. Who was the guy that did My Home is a Prison?
Slim Harpo?
No, it wasn't Slim
No,
Harpo.
no, My Home is a Prison.
I forget.
Lonesome Sundown. Am I right?
It might have been Lonesome Sundown. It might have been another guy.
Could have been.
But I cut that track, and I cut Nothing But the Devil by Slim Harpo, by
Lightnin' Slim?
Lightnin' Slim, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's the kind of stuff, I don't know how to put it. It's almost kind of, it's really low down, but it's happy at the same time. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Even the Lightnin' Slim stuff. Yeah. It's got a sense of humor. It's I think appeals to a broader audience than, which isn't many, mm-hmm. But I think appeals to a broader audience than the Chicago stuff even.
Mm-hmm. Well, Slim Harpo is long gone. He passed in 1970 at a young age. Lonesome Sundown is gone. Whistling Smith. A lot of these cats are gone. But Mr. Lazy Lester, Leslie Johnson is his real name, is still here. He's actually here today. Now, you have a close relationship with Lazy?
I do have a close relationship with him. Anson Funderburg texted me. But
we've heard of him.
In fact, Lazy Lester is my kid's godfather.
Wow.
And I've known him, I met him long time ago. And just playing festivals like this. Mm-hmm. And I had, he was living up in Michigan.
That's right, Pontiac, Michigan.
He lived up in, can't remember the name of the town. But
Pontiac, I think.
It was, so I'd see him all the time because I was living up there on and off, going there between California and there. Because I'd met this woman up there, and she had a couple of kids, and now I'm dad. You know, because
that's what happens.
I raised those kids since they were real little. It's a long story. It's even more sordid than what you think.
Okay.
But I had, in fact, I got one of the kids living with me now. He's a guitar player.
All right.
But Lester is their godfather.
Tremendous, yeah. Lester is quite a character. Does he talk to you for hours sometimes? Like I've heard he does with Kenny Neal, for instance?
You got to be ready to talk for a while if you answer the phone. Okay.
Well, the Fabulous Thunderbirds formed in 1974 in Austin, Texas. Did you know what you wanted to do with this group from the very beginning? Did you know when you played blues, swamp blues, and Chicago
I'd already
blues?
been playing for a while.
That's right.
Before I went down there, I started in 1968 at out in a place called Goleta, California.
Your hometown?
Yeah. Well, my hometown is Detroit.
Okay.
But
that's right.
my dad moved out there. He moved us all out there in 1960, and I started listening to Wolfman Jack on the radio, and it was crazy because when I started playing music, Wolfman Jack and it's this station called XERB, which was down in Tijuana, so you could hear him in Alaska on a good day, and I didn't have a big record collection at that time, so I would be listening to songs on the radio. And if I didn't get all the words, I'd have to wait for it to come back on again to get the rest of the words.
Okay.
But they were playing some great stuff. And when I was in high school, at the end of my junior year in high school, I started listening to blues. All my friends were listening to it, so we would go down to Los Angeles. But there were a lot of people playing in Santa Barbara at the time. I mean, when I first started playing, I was playing with people like Eddie Taylor, and people like Furry Lewis and Johnny Shines and
Harmonica Frank Floyd.
And Harmonica Frank, yes, and he was incredible. That guy was
and
from another planet.
People don't know him now, but he made a big difference in your life.
Well, Harmonica Frank, his thing was that he would sing with the harmonica in his mouth.
Okay.
He didn't have a rack. He lost his rack. He never got another rack. He would have the harmonica in his mouth and sing out of one side of his mouth and play out of the other side of his mouth. And he could do stuff like animal calls. He was a real vaudevillian kind of guy. But it's incredible because when he had the harmonica in his mouth, he sounded black. So he had hits on race records.
Wow.
It was pretty incredible guy. He was, I learned about Harmonica Frank from this old friend of mine, God rest him, named John Phillips. He's not the guy you're thinking of.
Oh, not that guy.
Not that guy, but he was another John Phillips. And
no relation to Michelle.
He loved Excella Records. He loved Lazy Lester. He loved Slim Harpo, Lightning Slim, all those guys. And he's really the guy that turned me on when I was just a kid to that kind of blues. So he was a pen pal with Harmonica Frank Floyd. And I'll never forget it because he would sign his name with the ends backwards.
Okay.
He would only sign his name. He would dictate the rest of the letter to his wife, and she would write. But, and he used to always tell me, this guy Harmonica Frank, you ever heard of him? I go, no. Then I ended up playing with him.
If somebody wants to find a Harmonica Frank recording, can they be found at this point, do you think?
There's one called, the two that were, they came out with an album on him.
Okay.
Like later on, after he might have been already dead. I think he might have signed that record for me, though. Maybe it wasn't after he was dead. But he had, I think, one single that was, like I say, it was like a semi-hit. And then this white guy, flat picker, kind of a country guy.
Yeah.
And it was pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, what would you say is your biggest harmonica influence? I mean, it could be a few easily, like,
Well,
Slim Harpo.
I love Little Walter.
Lazy.
I love Little Walter, period.
Little Walter, also from Louisiana, from Marksville, Louisiana.
What's that?
He's from Marksville, Louisiana.
Yeah, that's right.
And then he went up to Chicago.
Right.
Little Walter. Oh, yeah, well, that's a great choice.
Little Walter was a real virtuoso. Next to him, probably James Cotton.
Yes.
Next to James Cotton, probably George Harmonica Smith. I loved Big Walter. I didn't know Little Walter, but I knew George Harmonica Smith pretty well. I knew Big Walter pretty well. And, but I love all of them. The thing about me is I have a lot of different influences my harmonica playing. Slim Harpo's one of them, of course. Lazy Lester's one. But guys like Snooky Pryor and people like Junior Parker, they were also big influences on me. James Cotton was a huge influence on me for one reason.
Who just passed away.
Yeah.
Just weeks ago.
I just got a call, actually, from his widow. I'm supposed to do something for that funeral, and it's really sad, because he was like a brother to me.
Yeah, and you got to know him well over the years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a picture in my phone the first time I met him. It was like 1976 or something like that.
Okay.
But the thing about James Cotton was, one of the first records I had was his first record on Verve. And I listened to that and all the different kinds of things he was doing. He would be doing Sonny Boy Williamson, then he'd be doing Turn On Your Love Light, then he'd be doing, the Little Milton songs. And that was kind of how the musical concept I had for all my bands, even before the Thunderbirds, because I thought if it was good enough for him, of course, it was good enough for me.
Yeah.
And I'd be listening to that kind of stuff anyway, like I say, on the radio, because that's all you got back then, was really good R&B and soul music. And all the old guys playing blues were still alive, so I got to see them live and immediately started playing with them. Like I say, people like Eddie Taylor, but also people like Lowell Fulson, Pee Wee Creighton, who else back then? George Harmonica Smith.
Yeah.
I got to play with Johnny Shines back then. I wasn't even 20 years old yet, and they seemed to like it.
They like you. Well, you love them, and so I think they just saw that here's a guy that's sincere. He wants to do what we're doing, and they really did help you. Guys like Muddy Waters. I mean, he's another important guy to you.
Yeah. Muddy Waters was kind of the stamp of approval that I was looking for my whole life. Of course, I got it from everybody, but...
That's tremendous. That's a great gift, because they didn't have to do that.
No, they didn't have to do that. And be honest with you, at that time, I wasn't really that good,
You're just
especially
learning.
in the
You're a
very
kid.
beginning. But they knew that I loved them. They knew I loved the music. And I was yes sirring and no sirring them to death. You know what I mean? But I guess Muddy saw something in me, as a lot of them did. Muddy Waters, Jimmy Rogers is another one. I got to record with him on that Ludella record. And I wasn't even that good back then, really. A lot of people love that stuff. But it's way different than what I do now. That's the shame about the whole thing. I wish they were alive to hear it now, what I can do. And my forte was accompanying people like Little Walter did.
Yeah.
And that's what Muddy loved about me, was that I could back him up better than anybody.
Well, he would love that.
He loved it. He would say things to the press, he really kind of made me, and that is something I really appreciated, because he didn't have to do that either, but he was just a very, very generous guy, like they all were, and are. I mean, people like Buddy Guy, he's still a very generous person. He's from down here too.
Right, absolutely.
And in fact, he's from Baton
He
Rouge,
lived
isn't
in
he?
Baton Rouge. He's from Point Coupee Parish originally.
Yeah. So I mean, it was. It's an incredible run that I've been on. When those guys were alive and I got to play with them, I really didn't even think about anything else but pleasing them. I didn't care about an audience. I didn't care about anything. As long as they liked what I did, that's what made me happy, making them happy. And they really got me started on a road to... When Muddy Waters said all that stuff about me when I was a really young kid, 24 years old, I had enough sense to realize that it wasn't true. But my whole life since then, I wanted to be what he said I was back then. And that's been very important to me.
Well, you've had this great career with the Thunderbirds. You're still making great music. You're making these new recordings that you told me about, the traditional blues, Lightning Slim. So everybody look for these new records from Kim Wilson. And the Fabulous Thunderbirds released a great record last year. So thank you so much for being here, Kim. And everybody make it over to the show tonight.
It's a pleasure.
All right. Thank you.
Anytime.